Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI, here from the Combine in Indianapolis, inside the Indianapolis Convention Center right now as we speak. I'm also the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, and it's great to be with you. Got updates on the quarterbacks here at the NFL Combine, but I want to give you the latest on Matthew Stafford. Couple of big developments. At 12:14 this morning, I learned that at some point today, Matthew Stafford will be meeting with the Rams. I know that there are reports that meeting is taking place this morning, and it very well might. I'm not refuting those. I can't just confirm them. Again, at 12:14, I was told he'd be meeting with the Rams today, but I was not given any indication of the time of day of when that would take place. Number one. Number two, I am told that there are some folks who have used the verbiage or the terminology of common ground. I think that's a very fair assessment. However, when I asked people directly involved about where it stands with Matthew in the Raiders, um, I was told that the Raiders know what compensation Matthew Stafford would need to sign with them, and that would fit within their plans and they would be fine with it. So common ground may be a term, but I was told that they actually understand what the framework of the agreement would be, which I think is a little bit more detailed, maybe semantics. That's totally up to you. But I don't think common ground's a bad term at all. I'm just telling you what was explained to me um, late yesterday and then confirmed with a little bit more detail at 12:14. Additionally, um, there is a lot of talk about Matthew Stafford potentially returning to the Rams. And certainly in the NFL, you never say no. I'm going to go back and give you a great example. Mark Davis told Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler they were going to get to coach out the rest of the year that they got fired in. And so when I was asked what's the percentage chance that they get fired, I said 1% because you never say zero in the NFL. And just a few weeks later, they were fired. So you never say zero in the NFL at all. But I think that there is. Let me rephrase that. I know there are that the Rams wanted to move on, or certainly were thinking that for quite a while. When I say quite a while, not a year or anything like that, but I think probably going back to December. I know in January that was the thought process, but um, or at least I know that was in the thinking in January. So I would think it would at least go back to December. That's Hondo speculation, but that's knowledge based on experience. Additionally, I think that Matthew um, likes the idea of Vegas is a very short plane ride from obviously where his family lives. So they certainly could get a place in Vegas or an apartment even. Um, Obviously not a small apartment, but a condo, whatever, for when they come up for game days or game weekends, that kind of stuff. Um, but he wouldn't have to move all of his entire family. Could, but wouldn't have to. At this point, I know that the Giants are a team that was interested in Matthew Stafford. I am that I would tell you this. It is my firm belief that the Raiders would be his choice if he were to go play somewhere else, that the Raiders would be his choice. So now it's an issue with their meeting today. How much is there any chance of healing the relationship? I think both parties um, have. I think both parties have had feelings of okay, let's move on, but you never know. When the rubber hits the road, it may be, gee, you won us a Super Bowl. You know, you played really good last year. Maybe we just repair this. But I will tell you, I think that there's been a lot of um, talk about what the Rams would look like without Matthew. And I would certainly say, if I were giving my opinion, I think there's a better chance that he moves on, though certainly not 100% at all, and that they go in a different direction. Now, a couple other things I want to address: the Montana visit. I told you yesterday that he was not flown up there by the Raiders. It was not a recruiting trip, but that he certainly did meet with Brady. That's exactly what I was told was someone directly involved. However, I also was told by someone who, while not directly one of the parties connected to both, remember that happened in Cabo as well when he met up with Sean McVay. And I get the point. I understand that we're splitting hairs here and we're dealing in semantics. And I get that. And I think that's relevant and fair. I'm just pointing that out to you. So let's talk about uh, compensation or whatever. Um, I was told yesterday the deal could happen within 24 hours. It could go as late as March 10th. All interesting points. Here is something else, though, that I think is very, very interesting. Matthew is due some money, and the Rams are going to claim we want at least a one. We want at least a one. I was told the Raiders, at least at this point, and certainly it could change, but at this point, were not willing to give up their one. And even though we're dealing with several $1,000,000, it's not a ton of money in NFL money. But if the Raiders were, I think the Raiders' thought process was, hey, if we eat all the money, the several $1,000,000 Matthew's owed, then we'll give you our second, third rounder. I think that was their thought process. So I don't think the Raiders at this point are going to get away with their second, third rounder. They may. I don't think so. Which I did think earlier in the process. But I don't think the Rams are going to get their one. So I think would they end up somewhere in the middle, either the higher three, a two, some combination of something. We're going to see. But if it comes to Matthew getting traded, that's how I would expect this to pan itself out. And that's how I would expect this to work itself out. Now it's just a waiting game with today's meeting. Are they able to repair the breach, or do they continue to look for a trade, which then I believe that would be the Raiders? I was told there were three teams that expressed interest in Stafford, the Raiders being one, the Giants being one. The third is a party that's not been named. But I was told there were three. I do not believe, although he has not told me this, I don't believe that it's Matthew's desire whatsoever to go to New York. And I've been told that, but not by him. I want to make that clear that is probably not the desire of his heart to go to New York. So there you go. That's the latest of what we know. Now it's a waiting game to see what comes out of the meeting with the Rams, and I'll certainly give you every update that I get. Now, moving on to today's combine. Big things, I think, coming out of today's combine. Some very big things. As you know, this is not one of the best classes for quarterbacks ever. It's a very, very bad class. Doesn't mean that there aren't some guys who can't be really good NFL quarterbacks, but there are no dudes. There's not an Andrew Luck. There's not a Peyton Manning. There is not the guy that you're like, listen. I mean, think back to last year. Jaden Daniels was phenomenal as a rookie, but there were a lot of concerns with him because of the way he plays and his size, that if he didn't change the way he played, he's going to get knocked out. So what's the use if it's a 2-year career? Now, he played that way this year and played out of his mind. He was amazing, but he took a lot of big shots. How long can he do that? So there was legitimate question marks. When CJ Stroud came out, a lot of upside. He was the choice of who Dave Ziegler, the general manager of the Raiders, wanted. Obviously, I've already shared with you the thought process of Josh McDaniels, which was Bryce Young. But even there were question marks there, not dudes. There's none here. But there's a lot of guys after you get past them, a lot of guys that are intriguing. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel. And I know a lot of people are waiting to see his measurables when those come out. obviously here, but they're looking for interviews with him. But a lot of people really like him and think he's somebody that could be special. Size is a concern, but like one guy says, I'd rather have his heart and an inch or two less than where we want him to be because of his heart. So, but he's intriguing. Will Howard, extremely intriguing. I told you before, I had one general manager say, I like Will Howard, but if Chip Kelly is my OC like the Raiders are, matter of fact, if you listen to my conversation with Pete Carroll, his interview off podium, I told him that about one general manager saying, if I've got um, uh, Chip Kelly and Chip's on board, he skyrockets up my list. Will Howard's there. Obviously, Cam Ward right now is the best one here, but he has question marks. Shedeur Sanders, a lot of fans like him. There are some NFL teams that really, really like him. A lot are more of a potential guy. Um, I've talked to a lot that said we just don't think he's a top 16 guy. I don't imagine a scenario where he gets out of the top 16, so I'm not pretending that. I'm not predicting it. And certainly for the kid, I don't want that. That's where it's at. So because of that, I think, and I've been reporting this since my first mock draft several weeks ago, I look for the Raiders to trade, which is what I told you at the last NFL owners meetings was what was my anticipation of what they were going to do was a trade, which would be the case with Matthew Stafford as this has panned out, and then go after a guy that they can develop with Aiden, with Matthew Stafford doing all of it. There's going to be a lot. We're going to have the full videos with Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. Boy, there's 7 of them. You're just going to have to forgive me. I apologize that I don't. Oh, Jalen Milroe. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the 7th one. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just can't remember, and forgive me. But that is the latest on the Raiders quarterback situation, where everything is as of this moment. We will keep you updated constantly with information from here at the combine, videos. What are the guys saying about the Raiders? All of that at si.com/NFL/Raiders. And then we'll also be putting out the entire full length interviews for you to look at to really get a perspective on what are they saying, to get a feel for these guys. Does the guy seem tense? Does he seem very comfortable up there? What's his approach? I think you can get a lot from these interviews, reading body language and just watching people. When you're a young man and your dream has been to play quarterback in the NFL your whole life, this is a huge moment. There's several hundred media members, every one of them with cameras there. And how do they handle that moment? It's very fascinating things. And I'm going to remind you of one last thing before I let you go. Years ago, when I got in the business, I was told by someone who I greatly respect. He said, watch people, learn people. And some people will tell you more by what they don't say or how they say it than anything. And I think that's key. So that's a big thing to watch today. We're going to have it all for you. Thank you for joining me, Raider Nation. God bless all of you. Have a wonderful Friday.